We could try to finish up the whole video. But other than that, guys, like I said, make sure to subscribe to the channel and double tap that screen.
I can't point and tell you it'll take 3 months or 3 years, but it's such a rotten, corrupt, incompetent regime. This whole structure is going to collapse.
He lied to his base. And what the American public doesn't want is 10 years, 20 years of a prolonged war being advocated for by chicken hawks in Washington and around the world.
This was a major international war crime. This was a violation of Article 2 of the UN Charter. You can't just attack a country which is not a threat to you. The Prime Minister of Israel already has an arrest warrant out from the ICC. Another one should go out to Donald Trump.
I strongly believe that President Trump wants a deal. I strongly believe the Iranians want a deal. You could argue that there is probably only one country in the world that doesn't want a deal. And I think you probably know better than me who that country is.
Many US presidents have discovered at great cost that it's very difficult to end a war you started. Reports this weekend indicate that President Trump is, quote, bored of the Iran excursion. Iran, meanwhile, seems bent on humiliating him. The White House waited almost a week for a response to its memorandum, which is basically a proposal to start talking about a proposal to end the war. Tehran then watered down most of US demands and added several of his own, including formal dominion of the Hormuz Strait and reparations. I've just read the response from Iran's so-called representatives. Trump said last night, "I don't like it, totally unacceptable." And so here we go again. The US must also grapple with the fact that Israel, its partner in this war, is in no mood to end it. Israel is fighting a separate front against Hezbollah in Lebanon. You may remember that Trump brokered a ceasefire there last month. Despite that, 39 were killed in Israeli strikes yesterday. Israel is bombing Lebanon every day. Both wars are popular inside Israel, a complete reversal of the public mood just about everywhere else. And Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu appeared on US TV yesterday to make the case for fighting on.
Is the war with Iran over? And if it isn't, who will decide when it is?
I think it accomplished a great deal, but it's not over because there's still nuclear material, enriched uranium that has to be taken out of Iran. There's still enrichment sites that have to be dismantled. There are still proxies that Iran supports. There are ballistic missiles that they still want to produce. Now, we've degraded a lot of it, but all of that is still there, and there's work to be done.
How do you envision the highly enriched uranium will be removed from Iran?
You go in and you take it out.
With what? Special forces from Israel, special forces from the United States working in tandem under international supervision? How?
Well, I'm not going to talk about military means, but what President Trump has said to me, I want to go in there. I mean, he said that publicly. He said it, and I think he's right. He's very committed to this.
It's not over, says Netanyahu, clear as day, and it's been a bumper weekend for comments by Israelis which seem designed to infuriate Americans. Jonathan Pollard is a hugely controversial figure in the US. He's the Navy intelligence analyst turned spy who sold secrets to Israel. Some of Trump's top donors lobbied for his freedom.
Now, here's the wildest part. Jonathan Pollard actually got a meeting with the Israeli ambassador, Mike Huckabee, walked into the US embassy and sat down and pretty much was getting treated like a hero. A guy that pretty much betrayed us, pretty much sold our secrets to Russians. So, yeah, for some reason, an Israeli spy was being pretty much celebrated by our ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee.
He's now an Israeli citizen, but he's apparently no fan of the US president.
He's loved in this country.
He's loved in this country.
Jonathan Pollard?
Well, that just shows you how stupid a lot of people in this country really are. You have a guy like Trump who doesn't really know much about anything that's going on in this region, except maybe the price of real estate. And he's dependent on people like Jared Kushner or Steve Witkoff, who I call Tweedledum and Tweedledee, that are only interested in one thing, and that's their bank account. It's as simple as that. This is not a man that you can trust.
Well, trust is becoming a major barrier to ending the war.
And you know, so crazy. Take what he says and with a grain of salt. I don't care that he's speaking out against the war. This man betrayed us. He sold our secrets to Russia. Trust me, he's no ally of the U.S. And I'm taking what he's saying with a grain of salt. Thousands of grains of salt.
War. Can Trump trust the Iranians? Can the Iranians trust Trump? And can either side trust Israel to end the war, even if they do? Well, joining me now is the former Israeli Prime Minister and opposition coalition leader, Naftali Bennett. Naftali Bennett, welcome back to Uncensored.
And yes, the problem with this guy, Naftali Bennett, is that he wants to make Turkey the new Iran. So he's pretty much trying to fight Turkey through proxy in Syria and probably eventually take Turkey up top. So it does seem like I said, once we're done with Iran, they're moving on to Turkey. And he said it right out of his mouth.
Great to be here, viewers.
So last week on the show, I tweeted and then read it out that it was interesting, I said, in relation to a poly market, prediction market, putting you marginally ahead of Benjamin Netanyahu to be the next prime minister of Israel. I said, interesting, the only candidate with the balls to come on uncensored, which you are now proving once more, because Benjamin Netanyahu has, having done 3 interviews with me before October the 7th, not come on since. So I appreciate you having the balls to come on uncensored.
That's what we do.
And in relation to that poly market, it's now got Netanyahu just above you. You're on 38% chance. He's around 41%. What do you feel about that? I mean, there's a lot of people think you are going to be the next prime minister of Israel. What's your response?
You're helping us out.
We're going to win. In October, we have elections.
That's not a good
We're
thing.
going to win.
And that's not a good thing. Like I said, this guy also wants perpetual wars. He also want to try to expand Israel's border, even though he's on the other side of BIBI, pretty much. So yes, the Likud party, I believe, I forgot what their party's called, but trust me, it's on the other side of them.
They win big, and Israel will open a whole new chapter, a new page. We've gone through several years of really difficult years of on the brink of a civil war, and then October 7th, and then the prolonged war. Israel wants a new start. It'll be a wonderful government of people from the right, people from the left, religious, secular, a bipartisan government. And it's going to be a renaissance for Israel inward, a renaissance for Israel in the region, and with our relationship with the whole world itself.
How would you be different to Netanyahu?
I would unite. Israel from within. I would respect all citizens, whether they voted for me or didn't vote for me, whether they're Jewish or Arab. And I would.
I mean, come on, bro. You know that's cap. Like, yeah, y'all not doing that. I mean, shoot, if that was your case, you'd be running on a 1 or 2 state solution, but you wouldn't win an election talking about that.
Be open to the world. Obviously, on security matters, it's no big secret. I'm tougher than Netanyahu himself on security. But in terms of running a country, you'll see a competent leadership, a clean leadership, one that focuses on just building better lives for its people and not on the rest of the politics that's going on there.
Many people think that this Iran war is turning into a fiasco, that it was ill-conceived at the start, that there was no proper game plan that had been established, no real mission stated with any clarity, that the goalposts have repeatedly changed, and that all the pressure came from Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli government on Donald Trump to join this war, and that they laid out, according to the New York Times, a plan of taking out the Ayatollah and his top people, and then the IRGC would collapse from within, the people would rise up, they'd all be too distracted to concern themselves with the Strait of Hormuz. Now, only the first part of that has happened. Given where we are with this war, nearly 10 weeks in, I mean, are you optimistic about the way it's going? Do you feel good about this?
Well, I think it was necessary, and I want to explain why. The alternative was to not act, and Iran was in the process of creating a shield which would prevent any future attack. The shield was by moving nuclear material underground and by producing such a big amount of ballistic missiles that it would deem Iran unattackable. And once it would reach that zone of immunity, then it would race forward towards a nuclear weapon.
No, the problem is, though, if they have these ballistic missiles, you just can't recklessly bomb them without having, repercussions. The problem is you guys want to recklessly bomb Iran without Iran being able to strike back. That's why you're fearful of their missile capability, because they've proven in the 12-day war that they're able to shoot right through the Iron Dome and overwhelm the Iron Dome. So, of course, you guys want to get rid of their ballistic missiles because they've shown to be a great threat to you guys. And, of course, their proxies as well. So it's not even about Iran going towards a nuke. It's about the military threat of Iran outside their nuclear capability.
We had to act before we'd lose the ability to act, and that's what we did.
Right, but as I'm looking at this, and I was saying this from day one, if the objective is to make sure that Iran can't have a nuclear weapon, then at some stage you have to get the enriched uranium. Benjamin Netanyahu in this CBS interview overnight said, we've got to go in and take it out. But he hasn't explained how that's going to happen. No military expert thinks that's possible without boots on the ground. That would be a dramatic escalation of an already bogged down war, which President Trump may have no appetite for politically, never mind anything else. How are you going to get the enriched uranium?
Well, I think there's a few things that need to be done. The enriched uranium is one of them, and dismantling the nuclear program is another. And the third is putting a cap on the ballistic missile production. And what I would urge you and your viewers to imagine what the Middle East would look like. Now we've seen what Iran can do and wants to do, but it's an Iran that doesn't have a nuclear umbrella. Imagine the same Iran with a nuclear umbrella. So my point is, it's not easy. It's not easy, first and foremost, for us. We're the ones who have been on the...
Well, here's the problem. Iran with a nuclear umbrella means that we just won't be attacking them no more, I guess. That's what it means. It means that we just leave them the F alone, and that's what they all want to hide from you. They don't want Iran to have a nuke, not because they're just going to start attacking their worst enemies. No, it's because we're going to be forced to leave them alone like we had to do with North Korea. Like, that's what they don't want, for us to be forced to leave Iran alone and let them be an actor in the global stage. We don't want them. I mean, well, yeah, we don't want them to be, and Israel doesn't want them to be. And the only way to keep them from doing that is to fearmonger you guys into thinking as soon as they get a nuke, they're going to strike you. No, as soon as they get a nuke, we're going to leave them the F alone. And they don't want y'all to know that.
A recipient end of all these ballistic missiles, not only also UAE and other friends in the Middle East, but the alternative is much worse. So we're not in a choice between great and terrible. We're in a choice between very difficult and worse. And we chose the very difficult path.
Right, but some would say that this is going, if you're in the Iranian regime, this is going quite well for them in the sense that, yes, they've taken a pounding on their military capability. That is undeniable. But that actually, by controlling the Strait of Hormuz, they've now established a asymmetric war in which they have all the cards. And by also attacking their Gulf state neighbors in the way that they have showed there that there's a different war they can be waging that doesn't involve direct engagement with the Americans or the Israelis. So if you're the Iranians, why would you do any kind of deal that means you surrender any control of the Strait of Hormuz? And why would you give up voluntarily your enriched uranium?
And I mean, yeah, and here's the thing though, it's like, yeah, why would you voluntarily give up control of the Strait if America, the strongest military in the world, can't remove you? Like, really think about it, and think about how dumb it was for us to ask, NATO countries to come over there and, oh, can you help us release it? So we asked them to, okay, look, man, I know y'all need it too. Y'all need it more than us. So can you go over here and help us open it? And they're looking at us like, dog, are you serious? You can't open it. The strongest navy in the world, strongest million in the world can't get Iran's grip off the Strait of Hormuz. What makes you think we can? So, I mean, real with you, I kind of felt when NATO kind of just said, nah, we're out of this one. If you can't do it, no one can. And also, we don't want to get dragged into a conflict because Israel dragged y'all in. Like, that's not what this alliance is about.
Or nuclear program. That's the bit I can't work out how you're going to make that happen if they conclude we don't need to do it.
Well, my analysis is different. I think Iran exposed its true colors. Now everyone knows what it wants to do, what it would do, and certainly can imagine what it would do if it had the whole nuclear umbrella and the massive amounts of ballistic missiles, which it didn't have. Now it had.
And here's the problem, guys. We can't be picking and choosing now who gets nuclear weapons. At this point, is either everybody can have them so we can ensure mutual destruction for everybody, or nobody has them so we don't have to worry about the threat from nobody. The problem is what we're showing on the global stage is that the people who have nukes cannot be trusted to be fair with the people who don't, because the people who don't have nukes get bullied on the global stage. And that's what we prove with Ukraine, and that's what we prove with Iran, Libya, and other countries as well. When you don't get nukes, you get bullied by the countries that do. So when we're setting that example up, you can't be mad when all of these countries start trying to push to get some of their own, because they understand that's the only way you have any type of sovereignty out here. And it's sad that we even painted that reality for them.
Several thousand. Imagine it had 30,000 ballistic missiles, including the intercontinental ones. So now we all see Iran for what it is. And to be fair, Iran has taken a huge hit. Its economy is really gone. Infrastructure. This regime, PIERS, I believe, will not survive in the long haul. Now, I can't point and tell you it'll take 3 months or 3 years, but it's such a rotten, corrupt, incompetent regime, despised by its own people, old, and this whole structure is going to collapse. And what we can do, even if it doesn't happen right now, throughout the next few years, not unlike the Soviet Union of the late 80s, we can encourage that collapse. So a new, better sort of regime comes there. Hopefully a free one that doesn't kill 30,000 of its own people just for demonstrating.
But we had, guarantees from President Trump, this will be all over in 2 to 3 weeks. Then it was 6 weeks. Now you're talking a few years to affect any kind of regime change. The goalposts, like I say, have been changing
PIERS,
quite
I'm not
dramatically.
suggesting. I didn't suggest that we continue the war for a few years. I suggested that in many dimensions, economic, diplomatic, industrial, cyber, covert, overt, many different vectors to encourage the ultimate collapse that will happen. This regime is just like the Soviet Union. I don't know if the year right now is 1986 or 1956, but there's a lot that we can do to help accelerate that collapse, not through war, not only through kinetic means, there's many other means.
What if this war's had the opposite effect? What if it's hardened Iranian public opinion so that more of them now support the regime because they've seen bombing raids that have killed their loved ones, for example, which is inevitable in war?
Yeah.
And what if the IRGC have looked at what's happened with the Strait of Hormuz and realized...
It's like, look, all you do is legitimize the legitimize the regime of the threat of Israel in America when you go out there and you recklessly bomb civilians, bomb a girls' school, and all of those guys that were going like, oh, the regime is evil. Now those guys are looking at them. Now the guys are thinking, well, damn, at least the regime didn't bomb a girls' school. Like, maybe the regime got a point. Maybe it is the Americans that are the evil one. We start trying to push these guys towards the thinking of the regime when we sit there and we bomb their infrastructure, we bomb little girls, we bomb buildings, and we bomb bridges. I mean, I'm sorry, but if you actually think the Iranian people are cheering that shit on, you're a delusional retard. I'm gonna be real with you. You are a delusional retard.
That at any moment they choose, they can strangle the global energy market. And at any moment, they can also attack their Gulf state neighbors and cause them enormous economic damage. I mean, you talk about the economic damage for Iran, but what about the economic damage to the Gulf states around Iran? And what about the economic damage to the US economy, which is now causing Donald Trump in the run-up to the midterm elections enormous political damage? The damage is not just being done to Iran here. And as someone I heard yesterday, I think on Fareed Zakaria was saying, if you're the Iranian regime, just surviving is victory. And actually, they'd be quite happy stringing this out as long as possible because they know Donald Trump's on a ticking clock here, because otherwise, politically, it could be disastrous, whereas Israel is not. So could you see a situation where the Americans pull out of...
Yeah, he might have to pull out this war and let Iran get their way because Congress won't approve to fund the military for what? No, never mind. Yeah, he has to ask after the 60 to 90 days, he has to ask Congress for approval or to continue funding this war. And if they say no, then I mean that's it. I mean, you can't just keep a war going with no money. So he's just gonna have to sit there and stop it and come to the best conclusion he can.
This war and leave you guys to it.
Well, you asked a bunch of questions there. First of all, I would say that Iran cannot sustain this forever. It's taken a huge hit. It can't pay its own salaries to its whole apparatus of terror and corruption. They also have tremendous pressure on them. Secondly, wars are bad. By no means do I want to give an impression that this is great and we love it. No, wars are bad, and it's best to end wars. But there's just one thing worse, is having a nuclear Iran conducting the same actions, and then we lose all leverage. So it's between alternatives over here. I can say that this war will also create new alliances in the Middle East now that everyone has seen Iran for what it is, and Israel will be a major factor here. Now, regarding American policy, that's really up for America to decide what's right for it. In many cases, we have shared interests, but in some cases, it's different. For example, from Israel's perspective, Iran is an existential threat. From America's perspective, it's a strategic threat, and that's different, and we respect that.
I mean, at least he admitted it. At least he said, yo, yeah, for us, yeah, it's an imminent threat. Like, I'm gonna be real with you, right there, missiles could reach us any day of the week. But for America, it could be a strategic threat. I mean, not, an imminent one, but a strategic one. I'll go ahead and I'll give him that one. But I just hate how, pretty much a guy from Israel and a politician from Israel is willing to admit that, hey, yo, this is like more imminent for Israel, not the US. At least he admitted that. I got to give it to him. I didn't even think he was going to say that. Usually no Israeli pundit is willing to sit there and say that. They're trying to make our problems their problems, and their problems our problems.
So
and let's be real, we shouldn't be mixing interests like that with any country.
Going to work together with our friends in America and see what we can do to bring a good end to all of this.
But are you of the view, and are most Israelis of the view, that this can only be a victory if you do remove the enriched uranium?
That's a necessary condition. It's not sufficient. Removing the enriched uranium is vital, but it's not enough. If they continue producing new uranium, it's worthless. If they go out and build 30,000 ballistic missiles, and then 5 years from now they're unattackable, unassailable, that's also very bad. So taking out the enriched uranium is important, but it's not the only important thing.
But presumably then you're going to have to restart military offensive against the Iranians if they won't voluntarily give up their nuclear aspirations and their enriched uranium. The only alternative, if victory is that they have no longer got them, is to recommence a military offensive, right?
Well, there's a bunch of methods here, and when you want to achieve ultimately a diplomatic goal, the goal of dismantling Iran's nuclear program, it's not only military. It's a mix of military, diplomatic, economic, and I think by navigating this mix in the right way, we can achieve it. It's not all just about bombing.
Final question, Naftali Bennett. The war against Iran and the war against Hezbollah in Lebanon are both very popular within Israel. But what's been going on in the last 3 years since October the 7th, since the massive strike back by Israel against Hamas in Gaza, and what's been going on in Lebanon and Iran, there's been a massive shift in public support for Israel, particularly in America, but it's global as well, as you know. But a recent Pew Research Center survey found last month that 60% of American adults now have an unfavorable opinion of Israel, compared with 53% a year earlier, and a 20-point shift since 2022. Just 37% of respondents had a favorable view of Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu told 60 Minutes last night that the deteriorated support was down to social media and several countries manipulating social media to hurt Israel. But could it be simpler? Could it just be that many people outside of Israel do not share the view inside Israel that what you've been doing is a good thing?
Absolutely. I mean, that's a reality. I'm acutely cognizant of our international standing. And yes, we've taken a huge hit. That's just a fact. I wish that were not the case. Took a huge hit all across the world, including and especially in America, on both sides of the aisle. I will say that I prefer to be alive and unpopular than dead and beloved. But that aside, we have to do a lot of work. And my new administration, hopefully when we win the elections, we're going to tell a new story of Israel, of what Israel ought to be. Now, it doesn't mean we're going to be soft. We're going to be tough, and in some cases tougher. But tougher can also be decent. For example, inward within Israel,
Bro.
the way we, I at least.
Israel, you want to stop all the conflicts today, bro? You want to stop all the beef between the Palestinians, the Lebanese people, the Iranians? You want to stop all the beef? All right, cool. Give the Palestinians their own state or make a two-state solution. Promise you. All problems in the Middle East is going to be solved when it comes to Israel. Nobody's going to be mad at you no more over your mistreatment of the Palestinians. They're either Israelis or they got their own state, and everybody's going to leave y'all alone. Iran has no reason to support Hamas no more, and if you guys stop invading Lebanon, stop trying to annex southern Lebanon, then Hezbollah has no reason to exist no more. So like I said, if you guys really want to bring peace to Israel, give the Palestinians a 1 or 2 state solution, stop trying to invade southern Lebanon, and you don't have to deal with Hamas or the Houthis. And then Iran is going to leave y'all alone. And if Iran leaves y'all alone, the Houthis are going to leave y'all alone. So I'm going to be real with you. You guys can get peace by tomorrow, but you just don't want to do that.
To respect the rights of all Israelis and whether they voted for me or not, whether right, left, Jewish, Arab, whatever. And I think the way that we handle ourselves will tell a whole new story, a vision of growth, of prosperity, without forgetting the fact that we have to defend ourselves, but there's ways to do it. And I'm optimistic that we'll be able to repair at least some of the damage in public opinion that we've taken. But as I said, at the end of the day, my kids here, that I've got 4 kids in Israel, their lives matter to me more than our ratings right now in some latest poll.
Naftali Bennett, as I said at the start, I do appreciate you having the balls to come on Uncensored, and you do regularly, and I thank you for that. Thank you very much.
I'm never afraid to speak the truth.
Hey, BB's only going to go for the softball interviews. If he knows you're going to give him a softball interview, he's going to pull up. If you're going to give him pushback, he's out.
And if I may say, whenever I'm here, while you're very vehement about your positions,
BB looks like the type to get mad at an interview, leave, and then have an airstrike ordered on the. I'm sorry, bro. That's a bit go too far. But yeah, BB's the type to leave, get mad at an interviewer, and then bomb the entire news station.
You ask fair questions and you actually listen to the answers. So I always like being here.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Well, joining me on the panel now is Paul Rykoff. He's the founder of Independent Veterans of America, Colonel Richard Kemp, the former British Army commander, Benjamin Rudd, who's the senior fellow at the UCLA International Institute, and Matt Kennard. He's the journalist and author of Irregular Army. So welcome to all of you. Colonel Kemp, good to see you again. This war in Iran, Donald Trump said at the start all sorts of things, actually, but it was all going to be over in 2 to 3 weeks. It was going to be a reprise, effectively, of what happened last summer, short, sharp shock, and it was going to decimate Iran, destroy the nuclear capability that we'd already assumed had been destroyed a year ago. And it was all going to be easy and done quickly. Obviously, that hasn't happened. And the goalposts have been changing a lot. And they're now very, very focused on one goalpost, which is the nuclear capability encompassing the enriched uranium. We've just heard the man who may be the next prime minister of Israel, according to the polls, say that, rather like Benjamin Netanyahu did last night on CBS, that they have to get the enriched uranium and they have to go in and take it. You're an army man. How are they going to do that without a large commitment of troops on the ground?
Well, I think, first of all, I'd say that while President Trump and his military planners may have thought that this operation would be relatively short and not go on as long as it has. Of course, you can never predict how long a war is going to last. When you engage in military operations, the enemy obviously has a major say in what you're doing, and things do change unexpectedly. And I'm sure that the American military planners would have allowed for that and potentially even expected that. As far as removal of Iran's nuclear, highly enriched uranium is concerned, yeah, I mean, there's probably two options. One is by agreement with Iran to remove that highly enriched uranium, and the other is going in without Iran's agreement by military force and pulling it out.
And that would be the worst thing ever. It's best that we get Iran to give it up. Like, here's the thing. If we want Iran to just give it up, bro, come to them, say, look, we're just going to release all the sanctions. You're going to get billions of dollars back, but you're going to get back into the stricter version of the JCPOA, and you're giving us all that at 60% uranium. You're just going to start from scratch, and you're going to stay at that 3.6. You can have your little energy program, and it's all good. And then if, the Israelis want to sit there and cry about, oh, but their missiles and their proxies, I'm going to be like, well, you solve that. You put boots on the ground over that. I'm just here for the enrichment.
The second option is extremely unlikely. I don't think President Trump, nor indeed Prime Minister Netanyahu, would countenance either of those two things, or certainly the military option. I think if the Iranians do agree, and doesn't look too likely at the moment, to have give up basically their highly enriched uranium, then of course it would require ground presence.
Because let's be real, it's one, their highly enriched uranium is still a deterrent, it's still leverage that they have. Because like I said, it can always boost that to 90%, and now they got weapons grade uranium. And now here's another deterrent that they have, or a card that they have now: control over the Strait of Hormuz. So now if we want to have like a favorable outcome when it comes to the Strait, it's probably best that we do what they say, so they could probably release full control of the Strait, release it, or they have an administration fee on the Strait for for time to come until we're able to kick their ass off it. And right now, as has been shown, the strongest military in the world can't kick their ass off the Strait.
Some sort would require experts to actually collect the material and move it safely out of the country. And it would, of course, require some form of security forces to do that. So either way, yes, it does require people going in on the ground.
Benjamin Rad, welcome to Uncensored. I mean, I have to say, the longer this has dragged on, the more I'm baffled about why this was ever started. Because yes, they've smashed up the Iranian military. There's no doubt about that. But they haven't decimated it in the way Donald Trump talks about. The IRGC is still clearly firmly in charge. The son of the Ayatollah, the new supreme leader, appears to now be running the show again after sustaining serious injury. They've got complete control of the Strait of Hormuz. We've tried a blockade. We pulled the blockade. Every time anyone tries anything with them, they immediately attack one of the Gulf states. It seems to me that strategically, Iran has proved to be a much more effective opponent than perhaps Donald Trump suspected when he was persuaded to join Israel on this mission.
Thank you for having me on. I'm glad to be here. It's as a refugee from the '79 revolution and someone who's studied it in depth. What's fascinating is that revolution took 2 years to unfold. For the first 6, 7, 8 months, for the first year, everyone thought that the Shah was in complete control, that the military, that the country was completely unified under his command, that the people were behind him. There was a gross misreading of intelligence of the domestic situation. All of this to say two things can be true at once. Number one, that the American objectives, strategic, have been vague.
Now, the funny thing is, we were painting a fairy tale with the Shah because we didn't want to come down to the reality that the guy that we put in there that's giving us, favorable terms on the oil is pretty much being seen as unpopular and as a sellout to the Americans. And that's what's pretty much led to him being overthrown. The whole Iranian revolution. Yeah. And here's the thing, like I said, we put in that leader that was pretty much selling out his own people. You don't think the Iranians, or you think the Iranians forgot about that? No, they remember. They remember all too well.
And, at best, and that's being generous, and have not been met. And two, we don't know exactly what is going on within the Iranian hierarchy. The supreme leader, I would maintain, is incapacitated. Again, we haven't seen him. We haven't heard from him. Is he alive? Is he barely alive? I mean, we assume he is based on intelligence reports. Is he in charge? I don't think so. I think it's more of a military junta led by 3 or 4 of the top IRGC commanders who are speaking on behalf of the supreme leader, very much sort of in line with Shia belief about the hidden Mahdi, the hidden imam, and basically it's the clerics who speak on his behalf. It's very sort of similar to that setup. And then secondly, Iran has a domestic problem. It had one before this war started. It had one going back years. It is incredibly unpopular. And that unpopularity and the pressure, domestic pressure, will only increase as the conditions in the country worsen, as hyperinflation increases, and as the ability of the people to lead their lives in the way they want becomes more and more challenged. The question is, can Iran hide that from the world, which they have tried to do by shutting off the internet? So yes, you can have a critical assessment of the U.S. operation. That does not mean that internally and domestically, the country is where its leadership wants it to be.
Spring has sprung, but one thing that doesn't change with the seasons is the importance.
Yeah, but the only problem is we don't see regime change coming anytime soon. And that's what we want, but it doesn't seem like we're actually going to get that. But all right, let's get back to the panel.
Paul Rykoff, I mean, it seems to...
Oh, guys, make sure to double tap that screen, like the video, guys. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Appreciate the support, guys.
To me, that what is most interesting to observe is the failure so far of any kind of uprising by the Iranian people, which suggests that the IRGC still maintain a tight control, and there's a fear of that. And obviously, they also don't want to be hit by flying bombs and so on going over the cities. But there has been no uprising at the moment. So the idea of a regime change seems a long way away, if not impossible. But the Strait of Hormuz issue has...
Oh, guys, make sure to support the stream with a question, comment, joke to disagreement in a super chat, or you can send a gift as well, or you can send a Venmo. Appreciate the support, guys. And like I said, let's make sure we are double tapping that screen and liking the video and smashing the like button if you're watching horizontally.
Become a global emergency. I mean, I was reading today one of the Saudi executives, I think from one of the oil companies, saying that every week that goes by now is ever more catastrophic for the flow of global oil, gas, and general energy and fertilizer and so on. And although some ships are getting let through, that's only with Iran's control and agreement. So where do you think we are with this?
We are in what I would call a sucking chest wound for America's military and economy that is now overflowing and impacting the rest of the world. And I think your question of the Iranian people is the right one to focus on, because they're a very important barometer here. No matter what Donald Trump says, they will tell us when the regime, if the regime is gone, we will know. And right now they're smartly keeping their heads down because they can't trust the regime who is bent on killing them. And frankly, they can't trust Donald Trump, who's killed a lot of them as well. So they're in a very, very difficult position. But back home, I think is where you're seeing more and more people calling for a regime change, because Donald Trump has entered us into a war that is overwhelmingly unpopular. He's done something very, very special. He's actually united all Americans against him in this war. You've got the far MAGA right, you've got the far liberal left, and you've got the middle, that 2/3 of Americans think this war was a mistake and don't support it. So Donald Trump got way ahead of his skis here, committing the military first and not committing the American public. And so far, he's been all gas, no brakes. There have been no guardrails in Congress. I think they failed. So he's got another unauthorized, unpopular war. And now he's coming back to the table with Pete Hegseth to ask for more money. He spent already $25 billion. He wants a new defense budget that's $1.5 trillion, which is an additional $500 billion for Iran. And America doesn't want it. What they see is the Strait of Hormuz not open. They see the enriched uranium unsecured. They see the regime still in place. They see them still having military capacity. And maybe most importantly, back here in America, they see gas prices at $4.30 a gallon.
Literally. And they're trying to say that we're winning. I'm just like, bro, we ain't got no goals completed, and the American people are suffering from higher gas prices. But y'all want to sit here and try to frame this as a win? I'm sorry, but it's not a win when your people are facing higher prices because of, well, yeah, the enemy has closed the strait. Like, no, it's not really seen as a win when they still have thousands of missiles and drones, when their Navy is still able to go out there and exert control over the strait. But we're saying that their Navy's been 90% is destroyed, but our own intelligence come out and say they still have 60% of their military, not military, but their Navy. I'm sorry, but it's really hard to see how we're winning when we're the ones suffering from this and we're not getting any real results on the battlefield.
and you've got 13 Americans dead, hundreds wounded. So most Americans don't think this was worth it. And American wars don't get more popular over time, they get less. And that's the trajectory of the popularity of this war. And Donald Trump's got a real political problem, but the rest of the world, as you smartly noted, has a serious...
I'm sorry, but the problem is he started a war with one of the most war-tired generations in American history, which would be like the Gen X. Yeah, which would be Gen X, and I believe the guys after up, which would be Gen Z. Gen X, the millennials, and Gen Z. We are probably the three most war-tired generations in American history. Like, we're sick of it. We're tired of it. We don't want nothing to do with it. And I'm sorry, but sadly, Trump started this war with three generations that are just done with it. And the only guys he got is the boomers. That's it. All of us were sick and tired and we want nothing else to do with it. If y'all want to do this, take y'all old ass over there and go to overthrow Iran for yourself and stop spending our taxpayer dollars on it.
Growing economic problem.
Yeah, and I think this has been my concern from the start of this. It wasn't out of any great love for the Iranian regime, which I think has been a disgusting and oppressive regime from the day it took over in 79. Matt Kennard, let's look at there's the kind of asymmetric war going on involving the Strait of Hormuz, and we've discussed that earlier. There's also an asymmetric war going on in terms of the aspirations and interests of America and Israel, it seems to me, where all the mood music coming out of Netanyahu, and we saw a bit of it with NAFTAIL Bennett earlier, is that they believe this is nowhere near finished, this mission, that there cannot be any kind of victory until Iran's nuclear capability is destroyed and the enriched uranium has been removed. Now, I don't see that they're anywhere near doing either of those things, and nor is there any incentive right now for Iran to surrender those things voluntarily. So where are we? Because the pressure, as Paul Rykov rightly observed just then, is piling on Donald Trump. I'm sure from the softening of his own rhetoric in the last few days, he's desperate to get out of this thing, but he doesn't quite know how to. And he's got the Israelis saying, we cannot just walk away. This job is only half finished.
Yeah, I agree. And look, the whole enriched uranium nuclear program is a smokescreen. The reality of it is Israel has wanted the regime change in Iran since '79. So has parts of the US government as well, and they're using the nuclear program as a way of trying to basically distract from the real purpose. And that's why, you know, they went in last year and there was a 12-day war, and that was called a success by the Israelis and the Americans, and we're back to where we were. And the other massive point is, look, we're talking about the strategy and who might win and who might lose. This was a major international war crime. This was a violation of Article 2 of the UN Charter. You can't just attack a country which is not a threat to you, and it's not a threat to them. And they should be indicted for it. You know, we've already got the Prime Minister of Israel already has an arrest warrant out from the ICC. Another one should go out to Donald Trump. And I actually think it's a bit disgusting to talk about the war in these terms of how can we open the Strait of Hormuz, blah, blah, blah. We're talking about a major international crime where the Americans and the Israelis killed nearly 200 schoolgirls. It's one of the first acts of the war. And they claim that it was a mistake, but it might not have even been a mistake. We've seen how the Israelis act. We've seen how the Americans act, and we've seen what they've done in Gaza, what they've done in Lebanon. They target.
The worst part about that was that they were trying to blame it on the Iranians with no proof. And when all the evidence pointed to us, there was people who still want to sit there and say, no, it was wrong. Did they bomb the girls' school? No, bro. All signs point to us. Even when they showed it on video, they would sit there trying to say that it wasn't a tomahawk when it was obviously a tomahawk. Trump tried to sit there and say, well, you know, we're not the only people that have tomahawks. Bro, yes, it was us who bombed that girls' school with bad intel, with a map from 10 years ago that still showed it as being part of a naval base.
Civilians, they target kids. They want to send the impression that they will tolerate no resistance. So we're dealing with outlaw rogue states that need to be held in check. And the legal institutions can't do it. The ICC and West France have done nothing. In fact, European partners of Israel have not enforced it at all, even members of the ICC. So where do we go from there? We live in the law of the jungle now. And I think that the reason that this will carry on, the reason there's this breach is because they don't even know what to do now, because they obviously believed going in hard, as you said, that Netanyahu gave this PowerPoint presentation to Trump and said, look, the IRGC will collapse if we kill the Ayatollah. It didn't happen. So where do they go now? The uprising, which they've been trying to foment, by the way, for years, and there was a good article in the Israeli press which came out in recent days about how Mossad has been fomenting unrest in Iran and was even involved in the December protests. It's not working. And as you said, this criminal attack has actually had the opposite impact. It's got people behind the government in Iran, people who previously weren't, because they see that they're being attacked by hostile, violent powers that want to take control of their country. Because why is Iran a threat? Iran's a threat because it's not under the control of the United States and Israel. The Gulf dictatorships, many of them are worse than the political situation in Iran. Look at Saudi Arabia. You get put to death for a tweet there. Who's the biggest supporters of Saudi Arabia? UK and US. So the whole human rights stuff is rubbish. The uranium is nuclear program is rubbish. And